Okay, let me go ahead and put the marker here. Just a reminder of what's going down. Okay, people in the middle, you guys are the ones that are allowed to talk. Okay, you really need to focus in on your annotations. That is your soap tones. That is your rhetorical devices. That is your rhetorical appeals. Make sure that you do talk about those. Do not get bogged down in your own personal opinion on this. Because if you do, I'll just jump in and try to bring back the conversation to breaking this piece of writing down. Okay?
Oh my gosh.
Because what happens is, if it gets off track, it usually gets off track because you start talking about I feel like this. If you're using I feel like this, and you're talking about your own personal opinion, and this may not be towards you. Okay? Think about what the audience is. People on the outside, listen to what they have to say. If they happen to point out a rhetorical device that you agree with and say, yes, this is an actual rhetorical device, you might want to highlight it in your own paper. Okay, if they bring up something about audience, like some of the ones that went around, is people just said the audience is all Americans. That's a really broad audience. We can narrow this down a little bit. You have to really kind of think. So start taking a look at this. Start kind of breaking this down, and I'm going to let you guys start. And I'm not going to say much unless you seem like you're getting off track. Okay, so go ahead and begin.
Alright, well, if you want to start, I found something that narrows it down a little bit. In the beginning, it talks about 9/11, and then the beginning of the third paragraph says, remember the feeling. So, I mean, it's clearly someone who was at least, like...
alive during the...
we were alive. Most of us were alive.
Okay.
But like somebody who was old enough to remember it.
So the audience is, well, it's not for us or anyone younger than us. So, and it's not people much older than us. So it has to be like mid-20s, 30s at least.
I would say they wouldn't have to be very educated to understand this at all.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty simple.
9/11 is a pretty big event. Most people know. I mean, this year I think, like, my government class last out there, none of them were alive, basically, except for a couple of us, and we're still teaching it. It's, like, everyone knows it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be taught for a long time. So.
The other thing that kind of they talk about he talks about different cultures and countries and what would happen if they were protesting, and he kind of puts that down into terms that everybody can understand. So I would agree with what you're saying there. I said that was like a good example of comparison because he's comparing like how these countries would react to people protesting and to like how our own country reacts.
Okay, so he's using a comparison. And yesterday I happened to mention, anytime you see a comparison pop up, which of the rhetorical appeals should be going through your head?
I mentioned that. Antithesis.
Yeah, antithesis.
Would that be
I think
like...
I found
What do you mean?
I was just saying, I think I found one.
Like...
You
Yeah.
talk about?
He talks about the fact that, I don't know how to say this guy's name. Kaepernick is able to he's fully entitled to his views, and he should stand up because of that reason. But then goes on to list like what the laws and stuff are in Cuba, and I don't know how to say that, and like Syria and China, and I jumped on that with the antithesis being like kind of balancing out.
I think it might be that very sentence that Kaepernick is fully entitled to his views and he has every right not to stand for the anthem, but that's the very reason he ought to.
I think I found a different one. Not sure. I mean, 9/11 doesn't really. I mean, it was written on 9/11. Like, that's really the motivation to I think he's kind of comparing like the tragedy in 9/11 to the tragedy of him not being up and going against racism.
See, I took him bringing 9/11 up as like
I think that's it.
like now people are disrespecting the country so much, and this day 15 years ago, like what happened over that time? That's what I kind of.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, I think it's the, I mean, it was the 15th anniversary, and it's like big and stuff, but there's really no relationship.
I took the relationship as the united, because he says we should try. The first word of our country's name is united. We should try to live up to that, especially today. I think he's making a comparison of 15 years ago and today, and asking what happened over time. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Comparing it to tragedy.
Okay.
And the tragedy of not being.
I think we can all agree that this is mostly pathos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't agree.
No?
There's a lot of logical
I
stuff
mean, I
in
think
it
there's a
too.
lot of pathos to it, but
There's-
like, I found motives.
Yeah.
That,
And ethos.
yeah.
The entire first part of it is pathos, because it literally says, remember the feeling. And uses, what do you call it? Anaphora. We're like, we were all together, we were all one. We felt a deep sense of national community. We sang, proud to be an American.
Okay, so we identified there is anaphora right there.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons why I went through this stuff yesterday. I'm like, I gotta go through this before we go through this one. You guys right? Because he uses a whole bunch of rhetorical devices. He used the we. What was the point he's trying to make throughout this whole thing?
That we as a country are united.
Okay, so does that drive home some of that idea of we are united? United States.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that's probably the purpose of the anaphora. But plus, each one of those things is to really drive that point of each one of those things. Togetherness. All one. National community.
I guess. Wow. Okay, I have a question. Kind of, when I was reading this, it's under a time to unite on the back. I have to kind of remember what I was thinking here. How do you say that? C1 chi. That one. Chismus. Alright. I thought that I saw that somewhere, but I'm not sure. Oh. Like,
an ABBA?
yeah.
Okay,
Kind
yeah.
of. Not like super way out there, but a little bit of a, like, but his given reason makes his action seem misguided. First of all, it's the national anthem, not the anthem of the United Police Departments. I think just kind of what the idea is what I was going for, not the actual words. But I'm not sure that it was actually there. Might have been me us talking.
But it sounds like something that we talked
Like
about.
kind of like a,
I don't remember what.
or maybe it was like above that. Kaepernick is incredibly fortunate to live where he lives. He not only has the right to ignore the flag and the anthem, he doesn't even need to read. I don't know. Probably not.
Well, let's go back to the soaps. Let's just start with speaker. So this guy's Mitch Albom, right? Who is Mitch Albom? You gotta understand who he is.
He's a writer, and
Okay.
He said something yesterday about he was with something with the G,
You can have
that one, as well as the ticket.
That's his game. So this one all over the nation. Okay. That might identify audience, but we narrowed down audience a little bit. Like when he talks about those dates and stuff, and talks about them in such a way that makes it clear that you had to be there to get it. it's excluded people who are too young to understand or too young to understand what exactly was going on at that time. But what else do we know about him? Is he black or white?
White.
Okay, so here's the question. Now we got to get into the rhetorical appeals. Does he have the ethos to write about a black issue?
No.
Okay. So how does he, a white man, write about a black issue against a person who is a black NFL player? What does he have to do? This is what we talked about when we talked about ethos the other day. If a person wants to create ethos for themselves when they're already in the hole, how do they do it?
By using resources and citing things that support the other side. So
Okay,
like if
they
he
might
took
they might use logos to build up their ethos, right?
yeah, or if he got like a quote from a man that's black, say like going
Did
against.
he do that though?
No.
Okay, he can do that. So what did he do? Because Mitch Albom has to build up his ethos to be credible in this.
He took his like what he knows about 9/11, how he was there, how he's like using his patriotism as his ethos, where he can talk about that aspect and not necessarily have to be like black to talk about a black rights issue. He's like using his patriotism to like be able to relate to people, and that way they trust him and like believe what he's saying.
Maybe maybe what we need to do is figure out who the audience is first. Like, who is the audience of this? Because it's going to be narrowed down even more. We haven't quite narrowed it down yet. Even though this is going out to a national audience, and we can get rid of the really, really young. Who else is this written for? Is it written to people that already agree with his position?
No. So is it?
I
He's
don't
not
know.
preaching to the choir.
So would it be the audience? Would the intended audience be black people?
Maybe. I don't know. Is it a race one? Because if you think about it, like, if you're deeply rooted on one side where you just totally support Kaepernick and you don't care what anyone says, is Mitch Albom ever going to be able to get those people? So those people are definitely off the table, right? And then at the same time, he's not going to be writing to the people who obviously agree with him 100%. Because
people that are on the fence.
Yeah, it's just preaching to the choir. It's the people in the middle, people who are reasonable on the fence and they're not quite sure where they stand on this. Like they would say, in principle, I support Kaepernick, but I have some reservations against some of the things he's doing. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to lay this out for them. Now, the problem is, when he creates this argument, he is creating an argument that is between Mitch Albom and Kaepernick. And the problem is he has to write about an issue that he does not have the same ethos in. So he has to add things that gives him more power. So in this case, he's talking about patriotism. All Americans are patriots. But at the same time, it may build him up a little bit. It doesn't really do much to Kaepernick. So there's something else. You've got to be able to talk to those people in the middle and make Kaepernick look less reliable or less credible than his statements.
So is he using like the logical statements? Because there's like a bunch of strings of. He talks about who he is and like he's a biracial Kaepernick. He talks that he's a biracial American male raised by two adoptive American white parents. He told the media that America oppresses black people and cited the recent police abuse cases as reason for kneeling.
Okay. So what's the whole point? Like, if I took this one line out here, a biracial American male raised by two adoptive American white parents.
That's what makes it. He makes it a big deal because if you only read that sentence and you think, well, how could he say black people are oppressed in our society when he's raised by two white parents?
Okay, so he's trying to break him down just a bit.
Yeah.
How can you talk about black issues when you weren't even raised by black parents?
The other thing, my grandma actually pointed this out to me. He used biracial, which kind of shows that he's not fully black person. I mean, he is part, but it's by using biracial, it kind of cuts that
Mhm.
stuff is on it. It's not, he's not like, you know, I don't know how to say it.
Okay, rightly or wrongly, I mean, what Albom is doing is trying to make Kaepernick look like he is less of a spokesperson for this issue. Like he's not the right spokesperson for this.
Yeah.
Do you think that actually impacts his audience?
Yeah.
Is he making a good argument, or is he alienating some of his argument, his audience by doing this?
Can you repeat that?
So is this an effective tactic in building up Albom's ethos with his audience, his intended audience, his people on the fence, or is this attack actually hurting him now? It's always when you start attacking the other side like this, especially when it gets really kind of almost in this way personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of depends.
You're running a very fine line.
Well, I think it depends a little bit because none of us can really talk about it from a black person's point of view. So that's like, as a class right now, we can't talk about it like that. But I think that there's a possibility of a black person reading this and going, well, if they are kind of leaning towards agreeing with Kaepernick more, they might say, well, he's saying that he isn't even qualified, and that might hurt their feelings, I guess.
Okay, so they might take that as him quite simply saying that biracial people would not be looked at in the same way as a black person, and they would disagree with that any person of color might be treated poorly, and that Albom doesn't actually understand black people. Is what, and I would say that would probably be true. It's going to be he's going to be playing this really fine line with that, because anytime you start to attack the personal characteristics of another person, you have to be very careful on how you attack them. You take it over a certain line, it starts getting into what we call ad hominem attacks, so just destroying the character of that person.
He also builds up his own ethos when he talks about the police departments, and he's saying that's also kind of knocking down what Kaepernick says, that it's the national.
It's the national anthem, not the anthem of the United Police Departments.
Yeah.
And he's
and that it's not a federally sanctioned act.
Honestly, I kind of feel like he was brushing that off a little bit. Not much, because he does, like he said, if it happens once, it's too much.
Yeah.
I feel like he was brushing that whole thing off.
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like he was basically saying, well, it happens, you can't stop it.
Yeah.
Well.
I feel like there's kind of I kind of took a sarcastic tone there. I kind of heard a sarcastic tone, if it happens once, it's too much. Him kind of being they make it bigger than it really needs to be. That's how I kind of heard it.
Yeah, I kind of got that too, because it's in the parentheses. It's not really important enough to be in his regularly written paragraph, but it's still going to be said.
Let's see.
The other thing I think that he builds up his ethos with is granting him. Kaepernick is fully entitled to his views, and he has every right not to stand for the anthem. Him saying that, I felt kind of gave him.
But then he goes back on the whole thing because he's still saying it's wrong. So.
Well, yeah, this is written from his personal point of view. It's not
I know.
saying, and he does say, but that's the very reason he ought to, saying he has that right. That's why he should stand.
That's kind of his point, because he always said he should, because the title is Kaepernick should stand.
Yeah.
Or right there it says Kaepernick should stand. So then he just kind of goes into it, and then he explains why he should stand, because that's when the country's coming in in China, she was from Asia or something and didn't get any medical treatment. He's lucky that he's allowed to sit or whatever situation. Sorry, but he's lucky he doesn't have to stand. It's not required, and he's allowed to protest. But because he has those freedoms, where people in other people in the world don't have those freedoms, he should stand because
Yeah.
those freedoms are being extended to them.
This is kind of getting into our opinions, but
Not really.
because I took it as like, where my question is, like, should that, like, obviously, yeah, we have those freedoms, but does that mean like we should just accept what we have, and even though there still is racial inequality, like, we should just accept it because it's better than everywhere else? Like, that's what he's saying. It's just like, you've got it good enough. You don't need to protest this.
Well, you're saying some people in the audience may be upset because of the fact they would look at this and
Yeah.
hear what you're saying here. So I think is that ignore the issues of America just because the fact is better here than other places. Instead of fighting for something better. And people in the audience who might be on that, leaning a little more towards capitalism, might be offended by that. Like, just saying.
And then the whole paragraph about, like, American Indians have a mile this long, like, and they all accept it, why can't you? That's kind of what he's saying.
He's saying, though, you can go ahead, Kat.
I was going to say, yeah, he does. Like, I circled that too, because it's like he's kind of, like, he talks about, like, recent issues like gay marriage and stuff, but, like, the whole black equality thing comes from, like, hundreds of years of oppression. It's not just, like, the gay marriage equality thing, like, it started in, like, the 1900s. Maybe it was, like, not really, but, like, there was a big push during that time. This is, like, hundreds of years, and, I mean, when he said, like, the Indians, I have it right there, it's like he's brushing off, like, hundreds of years of oppression. Saw that, too.
Yeah.
The way that I'm taking this is he's saying, but he's not saying that we should just brush it off. He's saying that his protest is inappropriate. Like, for what he's trying to protest, his actions are inappropriate. They don't relate to, like, there's no reason for you to kneel during the national anthem if you're trying to talk about, that's his exact line, not the anthem of the United States.
He doesn't really carry that through the whole.
Yeah, he doesn't carry it through the whole paper, but it's a paragraph, and that's, I think, one of his larger points.
Where is that?
Under A Time to Unite.
That second paragraph there.
And then he said, is it a problem? Of course, a big one, and one of many we face as a nation. But Kaepernick's thinking any group that feels injured in this country could take a seat during a national anthem.
And they don't, but that doesn't mean.
I think what he's trying to say, though, is it's not a good way to protest the issues. He's not saying that he's wrong. He's saying that.
Okay, I can kind of see that too. Like, I don't know. It's so I don't know, like, I think that goes, like, because he does, I think that's part of the reason why he added, like, 9/11, like, the whole, because that's another thing, like, I saw compared, like, these 19 people, however many, 15 years ago, didn't like the way we ran our country, so they put 3 planes into important buildings in the US, and now he's like, I don't like something about this country, so I'm going to do something different. I don't know where it's going in my head.
Yeah.
I see it.
That's, like,
I don't know how to say it.
a lot more drastic.
Well, I think that's
Yeah.
the comparison. Like, just because you don't like something much doesn't mean you do something drastic. And I think, like, during a time that's so important to people, like the 15-year anniversary of 9/11, it's important to people. A lot of people witnessed really bad things on TV and everything, so it's kind of, I think he's partly saying too that, like, come on, kind of respect these people. Like, you have your opinion, you're allowed to have your opinion, but respect it on this day.
One of the things I noticed in this was he made a real point to talk about that high school student who refused to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and tells the American teacher that America sucks. But not only did he make a point to talk about the high school student, he also said that this high school student was 15 years old. Now, that date's important for this because what he's trying to do, I mean, it's the 15-year anniversary. He's also showing that this kid's 15 years old. I think he's trying to connect the idea that Colin Kaepernick is a role model, and being a role model, what he ends up doing on the field ends up translating to other places. In this case, in the classroom. And what's the message that you want to send to Americans? That America sucks, or that America is actually really a great place to be? And then at the end of this, he also goes back to that whole teacher.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Teachers practice.
I don't know.
There's a lot of stuff going on in this very, very small piece.
Yeah.
Why would I write it like this further? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and switch out with one question before we do. If you could have Mitch Albom in here right now, what question would you ask him about this piece?
Ooh.
What?
As a white male, what kind of oppression has he experienced in his life?
Okay. So being a white male, if he's never had any type of oppression, did he successfully build up his ethos in this, or he just failed? I mean, he's not the right person to be writing about this topic. Okay. Anything else?
Pretty darn good question.
Yep.
I was gonna say so.
It's not as, my question isn't as kind of connected to that. It's more about this piece, but like, if Kaepernick was standing right there, like, what would your message to him be? Would you tell him that, standing face to face, what would you tell him? You're not speaking to the entire public, but what would your words to him be?
Would you like to switch? You guys are taking a little bit differently than my first hour.
Okay, we have nothing to talk about. Okay, so you can pick up on some of the things that they were talking about. You can add new details, but go ahead and go through this. There's a lot going on here. Still a lot to talk about.
Well, and when it says, by that night our country was unified, my question was our country really unified? Because you have to think about all of the people of Middle Eastern descent on that day. And like...
And how they were treated after.
What were the results of 9/11?
So by him saying that statement, he automatically excludes certain groups who were also present that day that may not have been part of the whole idea of being unified.
Yeah.
Because the Muslims were treated awful afterwards, all of them. And they still are.
Yeah, from my own personal experience, I mean, that day, one of the things I will remember probably till the day I die is driving home from school and listening to the radio. I just wanted to listen to sports talk. I wanted to do anything, get my mind off it. And instead of talking about any type of sports, because all the sports stopped that day, they didn't do anything, the radio host at the time was actually talking about, I think all Americans should go out, get a baseball bat, and whack every single person to see with a turban. Well, there was all sorts of issues with that, beyond the fact that most people that wear turbans aren't Muslims to begin with, they're Sikhs. But that kind of attitude, that day was definitely prevalent, and he's kind of ignoring that. Right? So he automatically excludes certain groups just by maybe stating that statement. There's that possibility as well.
I took that first part, like where she said unified, and like the terrorists, I took that as an antithesis, which said, oh, everything is bad, and then, oh, we're all good.
Okay.
Is that also epistrophe? Because he says, by that night, our country was unified. And then way later, he says, a time to unite. Like, he uses the word unified again later in the piece.
Yeah, he used, I think, just about every, when I went through it, he used just about every single rhetorical device I talked about yesterday.
Because another antithesis would be, at the third paragraph after Kaepernick should stand. It says Kaepernick is fully entitled to his views. He has every right to not stand for the anthem. And then it reverses that and says, but that's the very reason he ought to.
That was in Christmas.
Yeah.
And what Caitlin said is Christmas. I took that as a Christmas too. They said he's not. They said they talked about the flag and the anthem, and then they talked about his reason. They talked about his reason again. And they talked about the anthem. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, if you can see a clear A-B-B-A pattern.
I saw it too.
Remember, it doesn't have to be necessarily just singular words. It can be a phrase or an idea.
I found an epistrophe on the second to last paragraph where he's talking about, looked at our flag atop a rubble heap with tears in their eyes. They embraced it, honored it, swore to protect it. When he could have just said they embraced, honored, and swore to protect it, but he says it every single time to emphasize it.
Nice job, Caleb. What does ardent mean? It's in paragraph 4 after the time to unite. Don't American Indians have a list a mile long? How about Mexican Americans intimidated by our immigrant policies? For that matter, why shouldn't ardent Christian football players? Like what?
Does ardent mean like conservative?
Think about what words could you possibly switch out in there that might mean the same thing? To be ardent.
I don't know what ardent means. Is it like pretty strong belief?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of comparisons, and I wrote that as logos. Like everything that has to do with logos is almost also pathos. It can spark someone's emotions.
There is spots within this that he is doing all three.
Yeah.
And this, you don't see that too often in persuasive writing. It's difficult to do, to actually nail all three of the appeals in one section.
Would that be like when he's talking about the different places where...
Yep.
China, Syria,
That
Myanmar.
is a crazy important spot right there, because he is strengthening his ethos by bringing Colin Kaepernick down. There's a pathos here, because he's taught you basically you should be feeling some sort of... If you're Colin Kaepernick, you should be feeling some sort of shame for being this way. Or if you support him, you should be feeling some sort of shame. Because think about how bad it is in other places. And then finally, when it comes to logos, these are logic because he's comparing what Colin Kaepernick is doing to each of these situations. You got all three of them.
Isn't that also kind of hurting them, though, because he's trying to say, like, we're kind of like these nations or something, like we should shame them since they shamed him or something?
And that was something that Carly pointed out, and I didn't even think about. And to be honest with you, that is absolutely true.
Wait, what do you think that?
That, like, he's comparing our nation to those nations, saying they shame their people, so we should shame our people.
Yeah.
That's not unification. We're trying to unify the world.
That's exactly the opposite. And I didn't even pick that up. No one in the first hour picked it up, but once you mentioned it, I can see it now. And that is going to alienate certain elements of the audience who might pick that up.
I can't say I felt, that's opinion. His tone in this whole piece was like he's kind of confused. Like he shows uncertainty. I thought, because he asks questions of like, is our focus where it should be? This isn't about, he's trying to reassure people that this isn't a national anthem about United Police Departments, or, so he's trying to like reassure the people that they're not on the same page, kind of.
I almost felt like when I was reading this, he was trying to make the issue, like he's trying to show what the issue is. Like this attack on black people is not a national issue. The federal government has nothing to do with it. The overall American people have nothing to do with it. It's a localized issue. The localized departments that should be taken care of at a local level, like the protest. And instead, what he's doing is he's taking a protest up to the national stage, and that's the wrong thing to do, because he's attacking the entire country and all things that are attached to that country.
I was also a little bit resentful when he said, perhaps we need a reset. We shouldn't require burning buildings to fuel national pride, but it seems the less we worry about enemies destroying our country, the more we rip apart ourselves.
Yeah.
But haven't we been constantly fearing ISIS for the... Like, we're always so scared, like, we're going to be the next country that they,
Well, they have
mass killings.
So when you're mentioning this, the whole ISIS thing, like is it an inference he's making here, or is it just something, it's your own personal opinion?
Well, it seems like he's completely
You're saying that
missing.
we do actually still worry about
Yeah.
enemies that's destroying our country. Okay.
I mean, people in a football stadium watching a good game might not. That's not the first thing that might come to their mind, though.
I don't know. It just seems like he's excluding. Like the
So you
whole.
don't, you actually, if I understand it correctly, even the first group was saying this, you guys believe that he may have missed some of his targets with audience. Or maybe that we just don't understand his audience at this point.
Yeah.
Like, who is his audience?
His audience. I don't know.
He
I feel
posted
like-
this at a pretty good time, or you know.
I feel like he was seeing the country as more of a white country. Maybe not purposefully, like he wasn't being racist, but he was just acting like the country was just white.
Okay.
I mean, he was obviously, like talking about black people, so I don't know how to explain what I mean.
Well, think about it. I could write about black issues, right?
Mhm.
I've taken African American politics class. I have friends who are African American. I've lived with African Americans in my fraternity house. But for me to actually write about what it's like to be an African American, I'd probably never be able to do it.
And he didn't have, that's where he's really lacking, because I don't see how he feels like he could say something about this and be form an argument about it when he doesn't really know.
And that's why he spends so much time in this article trying to rip Colin Kaepernick apart, because he's got to make his ethos less than he's got to try to figure out, how do I bring him down in order to bring my credibility up. And that's one of the ways that people do that. When you argue, you have to actually think, okay, what do I need to do to make him seem less important, or his argument less important?
I don't think he did a good job.
No, because
it didn't register to me that he was even doing that. I saw the biracial thing, and it didn't make me feel like he was any less black, I don't know.
You got black in you. You are black.
So it's an attempt, but if you had to evaluate it, you'd say he actually missed the mark.
Mm-hmm.
Did it ever say, what race the 15-year-old was?
Yeah, I asked that question.
Why did he pitch a fit? What was his entire issue?
You know what's funny? I think I may have assumed
he was white.
I actually assumed he was black because he's from Chicago.
I assumed I pictured a white kid.
Yes, so did I.
Yeah, so did I.
For some reason, I don't know.
You want to know why I assumed that he was black from Chicago? Because Chicago has a real problem right now with gun violence, and it's mainly in the black community. And for some reason, when he said Chicago, I'm trying to think, why Chicago? Why is that so important? I think I just assumed he was black, and I made an inference that he was black, but it doesn't actually state it.
Do you think he did that purposely?
I don't know.
Or just he was like,
just saying America sucks just to say it.
Maybe it doesn't matter what color it was. Maybe he's trying to say that kids like America sucks.
Just in general.
In general.
Maybe it's not even related.
Relating to the Kaepernick not saying, if he doesn't stand up, he thinks America sucks. Is that kind of relating to that?
Well, I think the reason I put it in there is to send a message that, because Colin Kaepernick is somebody who is looked up to, this teenager may follow suit, and he may be sending the wrong message. That it's not the Black Lives Matter issue, that he's sending the message that America sucks. And I think that's why that's in there and why it's in place.
I don't think he connects it well, though, because he really only says that the kid said America sucks, but I feel like teenagers in general just think everything sucks. I think everything sucks.
Well, what's another flaw for Mitch Albom, just age-wise?
Because he's old. Wasn't he 30s?
He's older than me.
Really?
Yeah. Holy shit.
Yeah, really? I just think he was not like that.
That's the second time you've done that to me.
Sorry.
Old
That's not what I'm saying. For some reason, I thought of him as a John Green.
He's actually much older.
That's
I think he's in his 50s. If I had to guess. Is he 58? Yeah.
Yeah,
It
he's
always
almost
comes
20
out.
years older than me.
It always comes out wrong.
It's all right. That's why you choose your words carefully. All right, but anyhow, I mean, the thing is, he does. Maybe he has a problem connecting with teenagers and understanding the motivation of teenagers. They might be saying that, and it has nothing to do with Colin Kaepernick.
Or maybe he's just including random stuff to make it seem like he's proving his point, but it doesn't actually prove his point.
Okay, so what you're saying is he's kind of created like a haystack argument where he's trying to add something to this that really takes it off the actual subject.
Because like if you read it quick, you might think that, but if you really think about it, this doesn't prove any of his points. Because it could just be random.
Well, let's look at the back where he kind of throws that in there again, because
The gay marriage.
he's trying to tie it like.
No, he says America.
Yeah, because he brings it back, that
Yeah.
subject again. He brings it in another paragraph. He says, instead, a Chicago teen tells, so like, if you go up above that, yet people still manage to stand for the flag or anthem to show respect, not just for fallen soldiers or those who died to protect our liberties, but for the very idea of the country itself, the idea that we speak our minds and freely vote to solve our problems. That's what the ritual should symbolize. Instead, a Chicago teen tells a teacher that America sucks, and his teacher is disciplined. Yes, really, for attempting to make him stand up. That teacher might have been better served to remind the kid that around the time he was born, this nation was mourning. People looked at our flag atop a rubble heap with tears in their eyes. They embraced it, honored it, swore to protect it, and without a single note of the anthem playing.
Well, isn't there a law that says you have the right to sit down during the Pledge of Allegiance?
You can do whatever the heck you want for that whole Pledge of Allegiance. If you want to turn yourself upside down and moon the world, you could probably do it. Well, I think that would be...
That'd be decent.
That's a good way to
If
get
you
it.
actually have a moon, then maybe.
It seems like he's saying, like, the people that weren't there to experience it are being influenced by what Kaepernick is doing.
Yeah, and that's what I think he's doing in this. I think he's actually saying that because Kaepernick does this, because he's on national television, not, as an NFL player, and this is getting a lot of press coverage, it's influencing people who weren't there and influencing the narrative, right? And making people think that.
I don't think he's connecting it exactly to Kaepernick. I think he's just saying, in general, people today like Kaepernick are less, like, because he makes it specifically a 15-year-old, so he's right at the age where he wasn't really affected at it at all. And he acts like this, versus people like in the beginning where he says, we felt this way, and now time fades. I don't know how to explain it. I just don't feel like he's saying that it was Kaepernick's fault. I'm just saying that he just thinks times are changing.
Well, it also says the first time they bring up the 15-year-old, it says that the mom was so proud of her son.
So there's another age group that he's including. And
all I know is, like, my own, like, because I was there, so I can talk about it a little bit different. I think the audience is geared towards someone like me. I can see things both ways.
he includes himself in the audience because at the very end he says, by retreating to our separate corners and pointing figures. Like, he kind of says that I'm part of this too, that I'm going to go to my corner and I'm going to point and say Kaepernick should stand.
Well, he's making a choice at the end.
Yeah.
If you're on the fence, like I am, I'm not real sure how to respond to this. What is the most important thing when it comes to me and our freedoms? Is it okay to freely protest? Or should we actually have some sort of respect? When I think about core democratic values, I think, what is the common good? I'm stuck.
Could this be also a piece where the thesis is kind of at the end? Because he says, the first word of our country's name is united. We should try to live up to that.
Yeah.
When I was reading this, I was thinking about you, because I know you don't say Pledge of Allegiance. You stand up and face the flag, but I was like, I wonder how Mr. Brown.
Yeah, you want to know why I do that? It's really quite simple. It's because the legislator in our state decided to force people to do it. Like, they actually legislated it. I'm more than happy to do it on my own, but when the state tells me to do it, I'm not cool with it. So that's why I don't say it. They required it.
Are you breaking the law by not doing that? No. But we would be?
No.
So
You guys,
how is it a
I
law?
don't force anyone to do it.
It's a law.
Basically, the law states that we have to have a time in order to do that. It needs to be organized, and
But you don't have to do it. It just needs to happen.
it has to happen.
Oh, okay.
But you cannot force anyone to do that.
So then how is it really a law? It's kind of lacking the authority behind it, or power.
Well, can schools get in trouble for not doing it?
Yes.
Have they gotten in trouble for not doing it?
Not that I know. I don't even know how they would check for it, to be honest with you.
And they'd have to send someone in every day, know what time they're going to play it.
Yeah, it's like some of the laws that are created for like bathroom laws. Are they going to have the bathroom police come in and make sure that transgender people aren't using the wrong bathroom?
I wrote about
I
that.
like this in like sports. If sports are practicing, I'm sure officials are paying.
You can make as many laws as you want, but if you can't enforce them, it's not really a law.
Okay.
But that's my whole. I mean,
Let me check your
it's
genitalia real quick.
it's not that I hate America, folks. It has nothing to do with that. It's not that I'm a heathen and don't believe in God. It's all about the fact that the state legislated and said that you absolutely must do this. It ticks me off just a little bit.
Maybe that's why that kid maybe he was ticked off. Maybe he just didn't want to stand. Sometimes I don't want to stand up.
That day.
Sometimes I just want to sit down. And being told I have to stand up could make me feel like America sucks.
And sometimes you have different feelings than what people portray you as. Like Kaepernick, like when people see that, they automatically form their own opinion to why he's doing it. But until you ask him, like we said, we'd ask Mr. Albom here, what do you think of Kaepernick when he does this? You're not going to know why exactly he's going to do it.
Well, they have asked Kaepernick why he's done it, and I think he even talked about it here. didn't
Yeah.
he?
It was about,
He cited
wasn't it talking about
recent police
the
abuse
police?
cases.
Yeah. And I think what Albom is actually disagreeing with is the fact that he's saying that he's turning what is a local police issue into a national issue and attacking the federal government when the real protest should be directed towards local governments or local police
He
departments.
says
or
that
departments.
they shouldn't retreat to separate corners and point fingers too.
He also makes a point to say our president defended the man's constitutional right to sit, even credit him for stirring conversation on topics that needed to be talked.
So you think that actually mixes up the message because now he's talking about someone who represents the executive branch of our federal government.
And the black community,
And black community.
which is a whole bunch to go against.
When I read it, like even the first time, it's like the it's like the fifth paragraph. I still, when he said that, felt like he sounded like he didn't agree. Like as soon as I read it,
He said that man's.
That quarterback.
it just sounds like, I don't know.
But I mean, he moved up from that boy to that man.
No, that's a good point because the thing is this. When you look at America since 2008, there is really two groups of Americans. There's one group of Americans that says that African Americans have now made it. They are at equal footing as whites. Racial relations should be fine. The world's all good, right? Why am I marking 2008? There's no one.
Barack Obama.
Yeah. Then there's the other group of people that say, no, just because we have a black president, that doesn't mean that all the racial issues in America just suddenly disappeared and vanished. That we should actually be looking at and trying still to push for this America that is a little more inclusive, including all people. We've got those two different Americas. One that says there's no problem, you're making the problems, you're overblowing it, and the other side saying there still is a problem, and I need to draw attention to it.
Usually, maybe that's an opinion. Maybe I'll say it anyway.
Just say it.
Just say it.
Usually the people that are saying there isn't a problem are the people causing the problem by saying there isn't a problem, because when you say there isn't a problem, you're kind of like degrading the problem that there is and making it seem less like a problem.
If you're not
Emphasizing
part
the
of
racial
solution,
issues.
You're not part of the solution.
So let me
I don't
ask
know
you,
if
are
that
you
makes sense.
stereotyping? Do you think that there's not blacks that think
No, I know there are, because I've seen them say like, oh, I feel this way. But
I know one person, she really hates affirmative action because she believes that it actually